Hey, welcome. We are so excited to have a very special guest with us today. Literally, he is like the OG, going back before we were even thinking about barndominiums. I was thinking when I built my barndominium in 2018 that I was like ahead of it being cool. But we have with us today Mike Mom, the pole barn guru from Hansen Buildings, who built his barndominium back over 30 years ago. So welcome, Mike. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, John, and it's really a pleasure to be here. And thank you for inviting me to be your guest today.
Well, we were just sitting here chatting a little bit before we went live, and to talk about like your history and coming back. You've been in construction back when you were a young man, watching. I think it was watching your dad build docks, right? And then you got you're kind of not. He didn't want you to follow in his footsteps, but you ended up doing it anyways. It sounds like, and you ended up being a sawyer because you didn't want to be on any of the higher rooftops or anything like that. So a little bit, you've been in construction your whole life, pretty much.
But and you are right on that part. And my dad and my five uncles were all framing contractors, and my grandfather, their dad, he was a building contractor dating back to before the Depression. So I suppose that the sawdust has stayed in my blood.
There we go. Well, hey, so what we want to focus on today is talking about these post frame, or like when I were just discussing barndominium kits, and again, you've got such an expansive amount of knowledge. But for those of us that are trying to get our feet wet, understand all these different concepts and the information overload, can you just start with a real basic understanding of like what is a pole barn barndominium post frame kit? What is a kit?
Well, in our case, what we look upon for that building is the structural building shell, what gets you in and out of the weather. And then any raised wood floors, whether it's building over a crawl space or a second floor, third floor. The building I'm talking to you from right now has a partial third floor in it. So, and any stairs. So we want to take care of the structural parts, and everything we do is fully engineered, so you know that you're safe when you're in it. And to me, it's most important for clients to end up with structurally sound buildings that they will love forever. And if it meets those two requirements, I'm pretty darn happy regardless of what building system they choose.
Yeah, yep. So when you're talking about like the engineering for and we'll speak directly to you, because I know we've talked in the past about how Hansen has like a 600-page manual that they deliver with your project. But when you're putting those packages together like that, everything. Can you explain the process? Like, is the lumber? You guys cut the lumber there. Like, how do you follow so that it is all like laid out with these plans and stamped engineering set so that you're ready to go?
Well, it all starts off with the interactions between one of our building designers and the client, where we have built ourselves a proprietary system that not only does it price the building, but it's engineering in the building in the background. So where our building designer is keying in dimensions, it's going through and analyzing to make sure that every board and every connection is going to meet the design requirements for wind loads, snow loads, and seismic loads. So once a client has reached a set of features and a price that meet their needs, and they have ordered the building, then everything starts moving in a hurry. Our system generates all the specifics for the drafters to put that building together structurally for the engineer to review. Once the plans are generated and before the engineer actually seals it, we send those to the client so the client can look them over and make sure that we pick the same left. We had a case where we always have our clients look at the building from the outside in. Well, a particular client was looking at the rear of the building on the plans, and she goes, well, I wanted everything reversed from what you have drawn there. And well, to her, she went through one end of the building and inside the building and was looking at that wall. And so her left and our left were two different lefts. So once the client has approved their plans, then it goes to the engineer. The engineer is sealing those plans. We print them and send them to the client to get a permit if a permit is required. Whether it's required or not, we're engineering the building the same way. We assume that everything's going to have to go through structural plan reviews. We're in the meantime, we have gone to becoming not what I would say a full service lumber yard, but more of a wholesale lumber yard where we're buying semi-loads of high quality, very specialized materials direct from the mills. We've developed relationships with a couple of tremendous providers that are very high on quality. We're doing things like for wall girts and roof purlins, we're buying Douglas fir premium graded lumber, which means you have very little, if any, wane. So if you're driving a screw into it, you actually have wood there to drive the screw into.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have just done here we've finalized it in the past few days, is we have gone to all glue laminated columns for our roof supporting columns.
Okay.
Well, we negotiated to have our columns built all out of 2400 MSR lumber, which to give you an idea, that would be roughly 2.5 times as strong as that number 2 2x6 Southern Yellow Pine you go buy at Home Depot.
Wow. Well,
So,
and that brings me to one of the questions, like, when people would say, well, why would I buy a kit versus, going to the local lumber yard, to do that. So that I think kind of segues into that question, right? Like, I mean, you're talking about a different quality than someone just starting to piece things together on their own.
Absolutely. You can't buy these pieces at your local lumber yard. Chances are your local lumberyard can't even special order these pieces in, especially the columns, because there's no other column supplier that is using that grade of material. And we made a commitment to buy at least 250,000 board feet of columns from the manufacturer over the course of the next year, which in all reality is probably going to be closer to 500,000 board feet of columns. But we wanted to be able to give them a minimum commitment so that they knew we were really in this for the haul. And as compared to any of the other commercially available glue laminated columns, these are at least 45% as strong. And glue lams are it's the way to go.
Yeah.
The treated portions of them are treated all the way through every individual member before they're assembled. So the chances of the bugs ever getting to those, zero, none, it's not going to happen.
Are there other details like with your kit that would be advantageous over, again, just buying piecemeal from a lumberyard? What other that might be, screws, trusses, boards, whatever it might be. So,
well, and we were actually having some of these discussions earlier today, outlining benefits rather than features. And so we have done some things to for ease of construction. We've gone to specialized items like roof purlins, wall girts, joists, where we are color coding one end of those to match what you're doing. So all your wall girts will be spray painted green on one end. It makes it easy for you, the do-it-yourselfer, to know, oh yeah, the green ones, they go here. If they hire a building erector to put the building up together, we encourage them to have the builder cut the end that's not painted, because that way you can walk out and look at your building. Why do I have a purple board in the middle of all these green boards? So it keeps the builders honest. And for those of you that have building inspectors to deal with, it makes it real easy for the inspectors to walk out and see, oh yeah, Walgert's, on the plans it says they're all going to be painted green on one end, and I can see all those green boards. So yeah, it's just trying to think through what helps to make it faster, easier, quicker.
Yeah, that's actually great. It leads me to another question. One of the things I'll just hold up, for our members, our viewers looking at this, is I printed this off of your website. It's the planning sheet, the detail that you guys go into to guide your clients, your customers through the planning process is incredible. I mean, just the amount of detail, which leads me to kind of the question I think I saw on one of your blog, which again is just absolutely amazing. Anybody wants to go to the encyclopedia, Mike has created it for you with an ongoing blog of where he answers people's information and really quickly too. But I think in one of your blogs you'd mentioned that people were talking about zoning and building codes and regulations, and that basically in 48 states that you've really never had any issues after maybe some initial stuff, but you've been able to actually talk through with inspectors or local municipality officials to show them like the structural soundness of these buildings.
Well, that's always a concern, and some of it comes from the it's your grandpa's pole barn, and you're using
right.
And frankly, when it all started back in the Depression, they're using old utility poles, and we got into World War II, and farm buildings had a cap on what you could spend on a farm building, so they ended up being really minimalized buildings. And what we're doing today is evolved incredibly from that point in time, where the buildings are highly engineered, they're code conforming buildings. And I've gone toe to toe with a few jurisdictions that, well, you can't live in a post frame home. Okay, so you explain to me where it is you think we're not conforming, and I'll find the sections of the code book that will back us up. And I've won every battle, other than I'm stalemated with one, only because they will only address the issue if we happen to have somebody who has a permit pending in their jurisdiction. So outside of that, won every time. And it's less a case of winning as it is a case of education. And,
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll dive into that pond anytime.
Yeah. And that's Mike, I think that's one of the best things about working with you. You take somebody like me that doesn't have, a fraction of the knowledge you do, and you walk them through it. With just your personality, without, the ego or any of the attacking that some people will get into in some of these forums, but you're just, you are truly an educator, and that's wonderful. Speaking of education, if someone were out there and they're, because there are multiple different kit providers across the United States, if someone's out there looking, what are the questions that you would recommend people have to start asking, post frame barndominium kit providers? What should people be asking those companies? What's a good little punch list for them to go through?
Well, I think the best place to start, whether it's they're going to buy a kit or they're going to hire a building contractor, is this a fully engineered building? And engineering is not a cost. Engineering is an investment. If you look upon it as you are spending somewhere, I mean, whether it's included in the whole price or you're hiring an engineer, but you're making a one-time investment in an insurance policy that guarantees that building forever to meet the wind and snow and seismic loads that the building was designed for. So if you approach it from that standpoint, it's pretty darn cheap. On top of that is that a good engineer will actually save more money from efficient use of materials than what it costs to hire them. So there's really, it's a no-brainer in my mind. Now, there are a lot of non-engineered buildings going up out there that people are living in. And any structure is only going to be as strong as its weakest link. So it really doesn't matter if they overkilled 99% of that building. If one connection was under designed somewhere, the building might fail well below the design loads that it should have been capable of supporting. Okay. So that's number one thing is, if you do nothing else, buy a totally engineered building. I'm not talking about a building with engineered roof trusses only. I love roof trusses. I've been in the truss industry for 4 decades, and trusses are wonderful things, and it's great that they're engineered. But if the building falls down underneath them, it didn't matter how good the trusses were.
Sure, right. Just that kind of just popped up as a question too. You talked a little bit before about cutting the purple boards. How, like, is the package you're sending out? I mean, is it a raw lumber, or have you already made cuts and stuff? I mean, is there ahead of time where people are like, oh, the boards are here, we're putting them together just as the prints, or are they gonna make cuts as part of the process?
Cutting is going to be involved.
Okay.
And in all reality, we could pre-cut everything. Yeah. However, we have to rely upon the client or the client's builder putting those columns exactly where they are supposed to be. Okay. And I know of one company that they are builders that they attempted, probably 15 to 20 years ago now, to do a pre-cut post frame building package like that. Yeah. And it flew like the Hindenburg.
Okay. All right. Yep.
So you mentioned at some point in time there are some components that it doesn't matter. They're not dependent upon the location of posts on the building that we may offer to pre-cut, some of which we're looking upon the capacities of we've got a linear truss component saw that we're waiting for the ground to finally thaw so we can run 3-phase power into it. But supposedly it'll cut 300 boards an hour, which is more than we can produce from the truss assembly line. So we may have time in which we could do some of those components and just crank them out for people.
Gotcha. Okay. You mentioned about a builder putting the package together. Who is the ideal person to look at building a kit? Like, is it somebody that's got, a builder in mind? Is it a DIY? Like, who's the best person to look at using a post frame kit?
Well, to me, the ideal client is somebody who is willing to read directions. And so that's a DIYer. It's the guy that will he'll assemble the end table. And frankly, the people that will do that, and they follow the instructions, they will build themselves a far better building than they're ever going to get from a builder, because they will follow directions. Now, I run our technical support department, and probably about half of our clients do erect their own building shells. Okay. They're totally capable. I've had couples almost 80 years old erect their own buildings. So wow. It's not like it's not like you have to be 30 years old to do this yourself. But they do a beautiful job. Well, probably 90% of our technical support, if not more, directly involves a builder. Okay. And the builders all generally will start with your plans are stupid, your engineer's an idiot, And so it's okay, now that we've gotten those things out of the way, please describe your challenge and we'll tell you what the issue is. And it's always builder did not read the plans. The ever popular one is the builder will build the building some number of inches taller than what it shows on the plans.
Well, and there's something to be said about, like, going back and, following instructions, right? And yours comes with, you and I talked about this before, you actually have a 600-page manual that walks people through the build process, correct?
Oh, and it covers literally everything. I used to joke with people that buried in it somewhere was a diagram of a nail showing put the pointy end towards the wood. It's really not quite that bad, but it just walks through everything and stuff that we have nothing directly to do with, but impacts the results. Things like, how to prepare your site, how to know if you have good soil or not, what you should do with that soil, all the way through until they've got the last screw in the building.
That's awesome. And foundational stuff too is included in there, because yes. Once that soil, you talk about soil, but once the foundation, that foundation's so important. So you even give instructions on that.
Yeah, and that's where post frame, at least engineered post frame, differs from like a pre-engineered metal building. When you invest in a pre-engineered metal building, it does not come with a foundation plan. You have to go hire another engineer to design a foundation for you. Post-frame construction, at least engineered post-frame construction, it includes the design of that foundation. Now, it is based upon an assumed soil bearing pressure, which we use a fairly conservative number. If people want to save themselves potentially some money, especially if they have a fairly significantly sized building, it's worth investing in the services of a geotechnical engineer who can actually come out and do physical soils testing for strength. Because almost always the numbers that are in reality there are much stronger than what we used, and so it could end up using less concrete. It gives a good baseline. There's some states that pretty well require it. If you're going to build in most of Colorado, they're going to require an engineered soils report. Lots of California, same way.
Yep.
That to me it's a sign of a client that really wanted to do things right when they start off with, oh, I already have an engineered soils report. Well, that puts things that much farther down the line for us to begin with.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hey, you have given some great information for us, and as always, completely over-delivered. But I do have a couple more questions for you that you and I talked briefly about that I think are going to be massive, like shockers to like our members, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, like, especially when it comes to the time that it takes to build one of these, and a 10 to even 40% savings that I didn't like think about being a finance, like a money guy. So,
well, the first one is going to be, how long is it going to take me to do this?
Yes.
So you can, then this is just a rough guesstimate, but it's pretty close. If you take the dollars you're going to invest in that building kit and divide it by 60, that's going to give you the number of person hours for the average, very limited skilled person who can and will read instructions to be able to assemble that building. So, plant that back in your head. It's a place to start from. Now, the big one that John and I were having fun with earlier today is when you hire somebody to do something for you, and you have to either pay them or you're going to borrow money from John and pay it out over time. You're paying that out with money that you've already paid taxes on. You had Social Security taken out of your check. You had income tax taken out of your check. In some states, federal and state income tax. So you've got a bite there that's 25, 30, some states 50% in order to pay that money off. If you do it yourself, you are using non-taxed dollars to put that together. And so let's take a mythological $400,000 completed building. So if you general contract that building yourself, all you're doing is making phone calls, lining up subs, making sure people show up. You're probably going to cut your $400,000 building to a $300,000 building. So you've got $100,000 in savings, and you didn't pick up a screw gun. But it's not just 100,000; it's probably 150,000 because the money you saved was not taxable money. So you DIY everything on that building, and your $400,000 building is now a $200,000 building. But the $200,000 you saved was probably a $300,000 you saved. And I'm looking at this whole thing. I'm thinking, if this takes me a year and I can make $300,000, that's a pretty decent year.
Yeah,
I think most of your listeners are going to agree that I can make a lot of phone calls.
that's right. Yeah, that is absolutely well. And the thing I like, again, I come back and I'm not personally. I look at it through my own lens. Like, okay, I'm a banker. I don't like swinging a hammer that much. But the thing I do love about it is when you have that manual there. If you've got resources, if you got some family, like my I've got family that's really handy. Well, that kind of stuff can make a big difference for folks, because you've got the instructions laid out for them. They know, like you said, if they just know how to follow instructions, boy, it can be a family bonding project and a huge money saver altogether.
And on the bonding thing, I've got two examples from past clients, and one of them, a father had a 14-year-old teenage daughter that she was considering being troubled, and he and his daughter put their building up together, and he said this was the greatest thing of all time, and just turned her life around. And I mean, those things are priceless. And the other one was a lady got a hold of me, and for her husband, she and her 5 sons wanted to put together a building for him when he was out of town for 10 days. So
oh my gosh.
So he goes away knowing nothing about this, and comes home, and wife and the sons have this building done for him. And it just like, I mean, this is so great. It's like, I'm getting tears in my eyes because how wonderful that they all got together and did that.
Yeah.
And and for like an entry level, if somebody's going to put up a 12 to 1,500 square foot barndominium, that they're really pretty straightforward. You can get together 10, 12 friends over a weekend, and you could probably be dried in on a weekend. Just have a barn raising.
Right. Yep. All the old school stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, Mike, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart spending the time with us today. We look forward to additional episodes where we can bring you back on. You have always such a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate you sharing with us here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate it. And anything that I can do for you or your viewers, don't be shy about asking.
I did just pop up for anybody that's able to see this with video and not necessarily on an audio version, but we've got the website where you can go find Mike there. Again, his blog is amazing. He's so great and gracious about answering questions there, and all their contact information you can find on their website. Does that look right, Mike? Do I got it right on there?
You have it spot on, John.
All right. Thanks again, Mike. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, thank you. You take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.